Now, the Prime Minister cut short his trip to Copenhagen yesterday and flew back for an emergency Cobra meeting. In the past hour, Starmer and his wife, Victoria, have been visiting the scene of the attack. He promises to do everything in his power to protect Jewish communities, but Israel has accused him of failing to curb a toxic wave of anti-Semitism in Britain. Take a look at what the Israeli Foreign Affairs Minister, Gideon Saar, posted on social media. Now, he says the truth must be told. Blatant and rampant anti-Semitic and anti-Israeli incitement, as well as calls of support for terror, have recently become widespread in Britain. The authorities have failed to take necessary action, and we expect more than words from the Starmer government. But is it really right to hold the Prime Minister responsible for this attack? Now, I'm going to start with you, Jake. Thank you very much for joining us. And I suppose the first and most important question to ask is, how are you feeling this morning after what happened yesterday?
Well, it's been an emotional whirlwind, frankly, and a lot of it has been fear for myself and, of course, for the rest of the community. A lot of anger as well, and disbelief and shock, a sense of inevitability as well, that after 2 years of anti-Semitic incitement on the streets, on the media, on social media, from the UN and elsewhere, this feels like it was something that was destined to happen in some grim way. But I think also just a real sense of outrage at some of the hypocrisy coming from the very people who've spent 2 years smearing, insulting, criticising Israel and, by a consequence, Jews, now expressing their condolences.
Who particularly are you talking about there?
Well, the Prime Minister just last week, was congratulated by Hamas for his stance on recognising a Palestinian state without asking them to do anything, release the hostages or surrender. This week, he's lamenting a Hamas-style attack on our shores in Manchester, which, according to Israeli reports, was done by Hamas. We can't verify that. We don't know if that's true. But there is a note of hypocrisy there when you're not standing up for Israel and for Jews month after month and year after year. In fact, taking measures, policy measures that are harmful to Israel and Jews, and then to lament an attack on Israel and Jews just a week later.
Do you think your feelings are reflected across your friends and family of Jewish faith, across the rest of your friends and family?
Yeah, I mean, Sir Keir Starmer, even before this attack, with recognising the Palestinian state without requiring the hostages to be released, managed to do what few people can, which is to unite the Jewish community against him. And I think this has only really driven that nail into the coffin with regard to his popularity amongst Jews.
I think people might be surprised on the basis that Sir Keir Starmer has married a Jewish woman. He is raising his children in the Jewish faith. In fact, has been criticised in the past for saying that he wouldn't be working on Friday evenings, although with instances and things like this happening, maybe that's not necessarily something he's kept to. You know, but he has shown support for the Jewish community and those of Jewish faith in the past.
He's from the mouth. He's shown support. He's said nice words to the Jewish community. I mean, I used to be editor of the Jewish Chronicle. I remember it well when he was seeking elections as Labour leader. He courted the Jewish community with lots of flattery. He does say that he condemns Hamas from time to time, but only ever as a coda to the greater centre of gravity of his criticism, which is towards Israel. So I'm afraid that when you say one thing and do another, it's your actions that we look at rather than your words. And if Hamas are congratulating the Prime Minister of Britain, that's a shameful moment for Britain as a whole. And for Jews within Britain, it's no surprise that we feel afraid and betrayed by the Prime Minister.
It's worth noting, though, that he isn't the only leader that has recognised Palestine as a state. 80% of the members of UN recognise Palestine as a state. Do you think it's fair to hold Sir Keir Starmer responsible for this act?
For me, I'd question the framing of the question, which is we're talking about blame. And I think as a society, we're incredibly polarised, very tribalistic, whether we're told to blame Muslims or Jewish people or blacks or browns or immigrants, whatever it might be. To me, this is an opportunity to find a solution. And I think an element of that solution comes through truth. And when we hear falsehoods, we actually call that out, whether that comes from the British government, whether it comes from the White House, whoever, because whatever this is, whatever motivation, this is a tragedy of the highest order. But let's not use it to just point fingers. Let's actually try and solve it, and let's try and come together.
I don't think the motivation is in doubt, is it, frankly? I mean, the thing obviously the terrible act itself was awful, but the fact that demonstrations went on last night and that the people demonstrating, I'm just stunned by the lack of humanity. If it had been me, you would go and light a candle. Whether you agree with people or not, you would have the human decency to say these people were slaughtered. And so I'm just stunned, because that's not British. That's not how we behave. And, you know, we kind of, it seems fairly clear that it was a hate crime, you know, and this person was a Syrian refugee who was granted asylum in this country. He's called Jihad. I think it doesn't take Sherlock Holmes to work out what was going on here.
That's exactly what I mean, though. So the narrative writes itself. It's a Muslim guy who looks like a Muslim guy who's carried out a classic terror attack in a very lazy, stereotypical way that somebody would describe and predict.
But that's what happened.
No, that is what happened. But when it comes to a narrative, if we take, say, Charlie Kirk or the Liverpool Parade or Palestine Action, it's very hard to apply a narrative to that because the optics are different.
No, but well, if you want to talk about Charlie Kirk again, the aim of that crime was also very clear. It's only those on the left who say we can't possibly work out why this happened. I think you agree with me that it's very, very clear. And the question is, why has that hatred been allowed to be paraded through British streets, and why, particularly last? I don't think people should be banned.
Some people would say that we're conflating two different issues here. There was a terror attack that happened in Manchester, and there are issues that are happening ongoing in Gaza, and perhaps that's part of the problem that we have then
that we're importing a foreign war here.
Yeah, exactly. James from Caerphilly, what's your view on this? Do you think it's fair to blame Keir Starmer for not curtailing a rise in anti-Semitism in this country?
I am certainly not a Keir Starmer fan, but I cannot for the life of me see how anybody can point the finger at one man and just because he's Prime Minister, blame him. That young man on your panel, the young Radzi, yeah, wonderful. What a show that he's just put up. He is spot on. I'm sorry, Laurie is totally wrong. She is lurching, she is jumping to conclusions, and that young man who's looking at me
Hold on,
now,
James. She isn't the only one, and actually...
But it's not lurching to a conclusion to say the person alleged to have committed this crime was a Syrian refugee and he attacked Jews.
But no...
I understand that, but at this moment in time, in my opinion, she's lurched at conclusions. That young man has got it totally right. We should not label people. We should not place them into little pots. Many of them have got mental health issues before they get to this country. Let it be through MI5, MI6 and our Scotland Yard to point the fingers and investigate.
OK, James, I just want to put you on pause there because you say that it is not right to blame Sir Keir Starmer. You think that it is completely acceptable to put some of the blame on
I think that there's a lot of truth in what he was saying. I mean, I've heard people say that Keir Starmer's got blood on his hands. I would not go that far. Okay. He is not responsible for this attack. He didn't perpetrate it. He didn't inform it. He didn't fund it. He didn't do it. But what I'm talking about is there is an atmosphere of anti-Semitic incitement, not just on British streets. You were absolutely right to talk about the demonstrations last night. Within hours of that attack, not a single person on those demonstrations said, by the way, not in my name, I condemn that. Not a single person said that. Meanwhile, 2 Jewish people lie dead. There's been an atmosphere of incitement against Jews in the media, on the streets, on social media, and the Prime Minister has not stood strongly enough against that.
What would you like to see Sir Keir Starmer do, or what has he missed that he should have done?
Well, something has got to be done about curtailing those thugs on the streets. Enough is enough. In fact, at the Jewish Chronicle 2 years ago, when just after October the 7th, we reported that many of the leaders of those demonstrations had strong ties themselves to Hamas, and yet nothing was done. Existing law should have been used to curtail the demonstrations at that time, not to abolish them, but just to limit them so that there isn't this groundswell of incitement. Also, Sir Keir Starmer needs to stand up and say very clearly, Israel's not the problem, jihadism is the problem. The hostages need to be released, Hamas needs to surrender. That's how we solve this war. Killing civilians, of course, is a tragedy, but, one of the Jewish victims was killed by a police officer trying to protect him. That's how difficult it is to protect civilians when you're in a live fire situation. Okay. Keir Starmer needs to stand up for Jews and stand up for Israel much more strongly, and he has not been doing so.
All right, James, thank you very much for your call. Dawn from Essex, what's your view on this one?
Oh, hi, panel. Yeah, I mean, for me, I think, unfortunately, the buck has to stop with Keir.
Okay.
I just think if you look at what's been happening over the last couple of years, and I totally agree, everyone has a right to march. I think some of the pro-Palestinian marches, which have been on a regular basis, there's been lots of things that have been quite nasty and not correct in the behaviour that's been going on. I do also just want to add the issue with, synagogues, for example, and all this extra security that Jewish people are having to undertake at their schools, for example, is outrageous. And I'm kind of one of these people that reads the news, keeps up to date with things. That's been kept out of the press.
Don, what do you think Keir Starmer needs to do now then? What would you like to see him do in order to curtail this anti-Semitism?
Well, I mean, I think that we need to look at, the marches that are going on and how they're going on. So marches are fine. And I think, that is one of the main kind of issues because this has been allowed to happen. This has kind of snowballed. Things were getting worse and nobody's picked up on it.
OK, Don, what do you say to that, Radzi, that actually maybe the marches haven't been policed as rigidly as they should have been?
Well, I think we have to decide as a society, do we want free speech or do we not? A follow-up question would be, are those marches inciting violence or are they not? Because if they are, then they undermine the idea of free speech. But I suppose one question I might have for yourself is, so we're potentially pointing the finger of blame to Starmer. Would you point the finger of blame at all to Netanyahu over this?
No.
Simple as that.
Simple as that.
I mean,
you can't blame Jews for anti-Semitism.
Absolutely not.
Israel is, look, whatever the policies of the Israeli government, the rights and wrongs of the war, wars are always brutal, mistakes are made, there are bad people in every democracy at all levels. Israel is a real country fighting a war against a jihadi menace, just like we fought in Iraq, in Syria. We've killed civilians in the Battle of Mosul against Islamic State. Up to 40,000 civilians were killed in that battle.
66,000 roughly in Gaza.
Fine, but I'm talking about one single battle that we fought from the air. In World War II, the Americans killed 87,000 people in one night in southern Japan. We're talking, and Sudan, at the moment, the war is raging, nobody's even heard of it, 400,000 people killed so far. This isn't, so what I'm saying is that, yes, war is messy, war is horrible. That's why we try not to start them, apart from if you're Hamas, of course, and you can use civilian deaths as propaganda to turn people against your enemy. I would just say one final point is I would ask viewers to think about this as well. When did you last turn your television on and see pictures or video of killed or wounded Hamas fighters? You never see that. You only see pictures of civilians to give the impression that Israel is fighting against civilians as a genocide when it's not.
But do you accept that far more civilians have died than Hamas members?
Look, the UN global average is across wars across the world is 9 civilians for every combatant. Israel's killing far fewer than that. The average that Israel's
bombing hospitals.
Well, if Hamas are firing from a hospital and trying to kill Israeli troops, turning it into an operational base, it no longer is a hospital.
I think I just find it really distasteful that we're talking about global averages of people, just the fact we're in that situation. I mean, I think if we kind of zoom back in, the Jewish community is very small in the UK. And you're not a big voting bloc. And therefore, the fact that you ever thought that Keir Starmer would be on your side, you're not powerful enough. There are other voting blocs that are much more powerful. And I think I absolutely support free speech, and I would not have prescribed Palestine Action, for example. So I do think that some of the globalise the Intifada, for example, which means, make the kind of sort of effort to eradicate Israel a global effort. That kind of language needs to be challenged. I don't think we should be arrested for it, but it needs to be challenged both within certain communities, but also within the wider left.
But hold on, why shouldn't you be arrested for it if you call for
I don't believe that you should be. I believe in free speech. Okay. I believe absolutely
free speech. But one final point just to add to that. We shouldn't be talking about Netanyahu now. Anti-Semitism predated Netanyahu, by the way. The Holocaust happened before the State of Israel was even invented, even established. Anti-Semitism isn't the fault of Jews. Anti-Semitism comes from bigotry and hatred.
If it has been there before Sir Keir Starmer, why are we now putting the blame?
Because he should be standing against it, and he's not doing enough to stand against it.
Not doing enough.
And he's allowing that climate of hatred to fester in the UK.
Veronica from Cornwall, you're up next. What's your feeling towards this?
I'm sick. I'll be honest with you, Tom. I'm absolutely sick and tired of Keir Starmer getting the blame for everything. And that man sitting next to you is talking absolute rubbish.
Jake.
And yes, the man, whatever his name is talking absolute rubbish. And, you know, I hate it when these people just want to blame someone just like that. I'm sick of Keir Starmer getting the blame for this, the blame for that. He's doing his best. You know, he's not some sort of God where he can be everywhere. He's doing his best.
Veronica, but I suppose if you were someone of the Jewish faith in Britain today, you may not feel that Keir Starmer has done enough to support you, maybe not done enough to
what else can he do,
curtail the really negative parts of the pro-Palestinian protests. Maybe he hasn't done enough to condemn Hamas and ask for the hostages to be brought back.
I think you've got to look at the government, the sort of, you know, the police force and everything, and their sort of, and MI5 and all that, not looking into these people. Keir Starmer can't be expected to do everything, Storm. And by the way, it's lovely having you back, by the way.
Veronica, thank you very much. Thanks for your call. David from Southampton, what's your view?
Well, similar to what was just been said. He's being blamed for everything. He'll be blamed for the sun not shining tomorrow. You know, I mean, just give the man a chance.
Have we not given him enough of a chance?
Sometimes I'm ashamed to be British, to be honest, because of what's going on. I don't like the two-party system and never have done. You know, and we've got to do. If everybody put their heads together, something might come to fruition. But while everybody's, I mean, if he him going to the over there to see what's going on. If he hadn't have gone, the media would have kicked off. Oh, he should have gone. He should have gone. And if he didn't go, the media would kick off.
You're saying that he can't get anything. That he can't get anything right. Essentially, David, is that what you're
not
saying?
him. It's not. Well, yeah, in a way, whatever he does, there's going to be someone out there complaining about it, and it's not fair.
Well, I suppose that is the problem with being Prime Minister. Not everybody is in agreement, and therefore you're not going to make everybody happy all of the time. I'm afraid that's all we have time for. We are going to have to wrap up there. Thank you very much for all your calls on this. A huge thank you to Jake for joining us.